Welcome to the Q&A session for the documentary film Curtain Up. We're joined by Hui Tong and Kelly Ng, as well as one of the subjects of the documentary, William Chui. Hello, Kelly. Hello, Hui. Hello, William. Thank you for joining us.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Hello. Now, can I ask where all of you are joining us from? We'll start with you, Kelly.
Oh, I'm joining from Singapore.
Oh,
so as you can see, it's morning now. I think it's at night in the States while we're recording this.
Yes. And we?
Yeah, so I'm in Beijing now, actually in the same time zone as Kelly. So.
Oh, great. And William?
I'm joining in from New York.
Ah, the East Coast. Perfect. Well, I just want to say, this film was so packed with so many different topics and themes. It was hard for me to come up with a relatively short list of questions. So we'll just start asking them and see where it goes. I wanted to ask, Kelly, if you could give us a brief synopsis of the documentary itself, and then perhaps tell us how the idea of Curtain Up came to be.
Okay. I guess I'll start with the synopsis and Hui can talk about the idea. So in Curtain Up, we followed a group of elementary school children in Manhattan's Chinatown. And they're a pretty special group of children because they're all in the school's theater club. And it's not just any theater club, and they've like gone for competitions across different in different states. And then we looked at various themes, including so we filmed them as they were working on Frozen, like Disney's so it's a kids adaptation of Disney's Frozen. And we also sort of like got behind the scenes and followed them to their house and filmed conversations and interactions at home with their parents and kids and siblings. And because this is a primarily Asian American theater club, there were a lot of relevant themes that we could look into, like cultural identity and the tension between like personal aspirations and family expectations, societal expectations, and also a little bit of this like Asia versus America sort of like I guess differences, cultural differences. I think Hui can talk a little bit more about how the idea came about, because he started on the project first and I joined him later.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. So how did the idea come about?
Cool. Yeah, so it was summer 2018. And actually Kelly and I were classmates at the Columbia Journalism School. We're actually doing this first as a graduate thesis as a short, and then we developed into a feature. So it was summer 2018, and it was when Crazy Rich Asians came out first, and there was a lot of discussion about Asian identity representation in entertainment industry. And I was a big fan of theater, so at the journalism school for research and like some reporting part of the school, I just went down to New York City and did a lot of reporting on the Asian communities doing theater, like Asian theater artists. And there were a lot of stories. And when I encountered this group of children doing Disney shows, I was just totally drawn to it, because it was special. It was not adults, but kids were learning so much stuff doing theater. And it was a group of children in Chinatown doing, very iconic Disney shows. So it's, there was just natural tension. So the founder of the theater club, you can see in the film Bio Lee. So I just reached out to her saying that, there might be a possibility of a documentary here. And she was pretty excited. She introduced me to the principal, Alice Hong. And I met Alice Hong next day, and speaking about the idea of documentary, and she was super happy and welcoming. So the start of production was pretty easy. I started shooting like the day after I met Alice Hong for the first time. Yeah, and the kids were actually doing Aladdin at that time. So yeah, the whole production period actually lasted for like 10 to 11 months, because we were shooting Aladdin first, and then Aladdin was kind of as a practice shoot for us. But then, yeah, the story went well, and yeah, and Kelly joined me like a few weeks after I first met Bioclee and Alice Hall. Right.
Wow. So you started shooting in what month? What time of year?
October 2018. Yeah.
Wow. Now, William, when they were shooting, did you notice them right away? There were people with cameras.
Well, yeah, you could see their massive cameras just right there. Like they were always like sort of in your face.
Were you curious as to what they were doing?
Sort of, yeah. At first we didn't really know what was going on, and then slowly everything just pieced together.
Oh, wow. So back to Kelly and Hui, I wanted to ask, when you were filming, I mean, this really, Kelly, you touched on a lot of the topics that immediately came to mind when I was watching it. You know, there's identity, assimilation, retention of culture, parenting, education, all of it, identity being a big piece of this. What were some of the key questions that came up as you were filming?
I guess I think for me, so I am Singaporean, and so now I'm back home in Singapore. This was I mean, I guess I didn't grow up in. I grew up in pretty like homogeneous, yeah, sort of like culture, and where I sort of like belonged in by and large the majority group, because we're a majority Chinese country, but then. So I guess I was pretty curious between with like how kids grew up as Asian Americans, sort of like in between cultures in the States, because that was something that was fresh and interesting to me. And I guess like some of the questions I had would, a lot of it sort of like it revolved around some of the things that you said, like is it more of a need to assimilate, or sort of like assert your own sort of like cultural heritage, and what's the balance between that. And I think what was quite surprising for me was that a lot of the kids, even at like 10, 11 years old, were thinking a lot about this. Like a lot of the sit-down interviews that we included in the film was actually not like very, we didn't have to like prompt them for their responses. Like you can tell that William especially was super eloquent about a lot of these issues that we talked about. And it wasn't like, we didn't really like rehearse or had to prompt him for these things. And it was very evident that these were issues already that were very forefront and prominent. And that was what they were thinking about. Yeah, so I guess that was quite surprising for me. And it did, in a way, answer some of my questions that I had. And I think another point that I guess I raised quite often in the other Q&As was that they're actually more similar to me than I realized. Well, at least at this point, like so far in their growing up journeys, this whole thing about like the tension between like personal aspirations, especially if you sort of like are tending towards like the arts versus, what our traditional Asian parents might prefer us to do. So I think I experienced that as well when I was growing up, and maybe even to a certain extent now. And so I was kind of like surprised, I guess, to realize that it was, well, some of these kids have pretty similar experiences.
Wow. You answered one of the other questions I had, and I would ask you the same question, which is, in what ways could you relate to these children's experiences, and in what way could you not? So just to put a context around it, my understanding is that both Kelly and Hui, both of you have come to the United States later in life, and so did not grow up here. So in seeing these kids growing up and the challenges that they were experiencing, in what ways did you relate? In what ways did you not?
Right. That's a great question, because actually to add on to Kelly's answers, I was going to say, like, because one of the kind of main motivations of me trying to make this film is because I've been always struggling with this kind of like a little bit division between like my community, like my group, like international Chinese students in college versus like, Chinese American. students in college, because we have like kind of like we both have like Chinese students associations, but those are like different ones. There's a lot. We thought we're kind of, oh, we have a saying, like I'm on a saying, like the biggest culture shock when we came to the U.S. wasn't from like Americans, but from like Chinese Americans or Asian Americans, because we thought, okay, wow, we finally found some people who look similar to us, but the way they think and behave are quite different. So yeah, I've been struggling with this. In college, we've been trying to have some cooperations of student organizations between us, but it was still pretty small. Like there are a lot of divisions. So through this film, I was actually trying to explore like in what aspects they were like same or different from us. Especially with kids' perspectives, right? Because I've met people in college, but how about the kids? How about 10, 11-year-olds? The thing, okay, I think, okay, I'll say the difference first, I guess, and then I'd say I definitely growing up in China or like in Singapore, as Kelly said, there's nothing about being a minority, right? Being a kind of like especially in the entertainment industry, the marginal kind of group, the marginal community. So it was pretty shocking to learn from William or Charlotte that they've already developed an idea of who they are as doing arts as a minority, or they have to face a lot of challenges and systemic problems facing them, which are not what we are facing in China or in Singapore as a society. It was pretty interesting when William's mom or talking when William's mom was watching all the Chinese dramas on her TV, but at the same time she was saying that it was impossible for William to be an actor in the US, right?
Right.
And William was saying like, why are you watching all the Chinese drama TV shows on the TV? So it's two kind of very different worlds, but William is actually living between these worlds. And that's like creating actually even more like confusion to him in a way. I hope he kind of gets the idea of what like who he is like in between those two worlds. But that's a pretty interesting discovery for me, even how difficult it is for William kind of as a Chinese American. So yeah, I guess, but the good thing is through discovering these differences, I actually got to be more understanding their situations, right? And as a international student, like, or as a Chinese in the US, okay, now it's kind of getting more to the similar part of us is that as I live in the US for like 6 or 7 years, starting a career in documentary filmmaking, you have to kind of, in a way, internalize this concept that, okay, even for me, I have to speak out for certain perspective. Like, I'm seen as an Asian, or sometimes Asian Americans. So I also have to adapt certain narrative in a way, and speak out for kind of my community. So the making of this film is also kind of process of me identifying more with my kind of like Asian identity in the US, which is kind of different from who I am in China as a mainstream person. Kind of like, I don't need to think about who I am in China. So yeah, I think in this way, I kind of becoming more similar, or like in a way, think I need to think in a similar way as Asian American. Also making this film, it's an Asian American story, so you kind of like speak out for your community, right? As an Asian American doing theater, doing arts, and doing documentary filmmaking is kind of like a very similar thing. So
you bring up an interesting point. Did you, when, in telling your family what you choose to do, you come all the way to the United States, you're studying, and you tell them, hey, I want to be a documentary filmmaker. Was their reception, very warm? Or did they say, whoa, you really need to think about a medical career or
yeah,
being a lawyer?
Right. I mean, my parents are a very special case. They were super supportive.
Oh, that's great.
So I mean, now like even for Chinese international students, my case is very unique. Like all my friends are like told to do like not lawyers, but like consultant like in finance or tech or internet. You know, so that's definitely the mainstream choice. So a lot of people are actually pretty envious of my possibility, like of my parents' support in a way. Like so yeah right. So yeah, that's not really my case, but I know like for most of people that like especially Asian people that would be the case. So
Uh, well, I was really pleasantly surprised by your approach filmically. I mean, it makes sense with your journalism background that you really approached this from a journalistic standpoint. It was very factual. You let the story lay out, you know, come about very, very organically. And I was wondering, in this opportunity with William, is there anything that you would want to ask him directly now that the film has been finished?
So that we want to ask him? Or?
That you would want to ask him, and then I would want to ask William what he would want to ask you.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. My question would be, do you mean something we didn't ask him in the film that we wanted
Correct.
to ask now?
Correct.
Okay. I think as William grew up, and you know, he's definitely a little bit more experienced in theater. Yeah, because for a first question, I did want to answer this, but I guess I'll ask William this because I love this idea of performing your identity. You know, because in your life, you know you're seen by other people, by your face, by your status, and you kind of like you have to perform in a certain way that you know cater or that are normal to other people. So that's why I love this idea of theater. So I do want to ask William if you think on the stage you are more authentically you, or like are you performing certain ideas? Are you aware of what you're performing on a stage? Not only the roles in a show, but who you are as a person, you know.
So like you're saying, am I like more myself on stage than I am in person? Or
I think he's asking if you feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure. I think sometimes it's true, sometimes it's really not, because like, you know, because like you have to act out as the character, so you're not really being yourself in that situation because you're trying to be somebody else, you know. But then like over time you feel like you become the character when you're acting it more, so it's sort of an in-between.
Interesting. Do you, just riffing off of that question, William, do you feel that you can express more parts of yourself, you know, when you're acting, that you wouldn't be able to express in real life situations?
Well, I'm not really too sure about that because, you know, sometimes the character is extremely different from who you are. So you can't really express your own feelings if the person is different from who you are. So like it's sort of an in-between. It's still an in-between.
Good answer. Good answer. Kelly, any question from you that you would want to ask William?
I guess I'm actually more curious about what William, your perceptions are of like what your mom as in if you think your mom sort of like mindset and thinking about you wanting to pursue acting and the arts has changed or shifted in any way, because I always found that quite an endearing aspect of their relationship, that, you know, sort of like what we were saying earlier about how his mom likes to watch Chinese shows all the time, but then sort of like is not as confident or encouraging about like him or the children sort of like pursuing the arts, not as comfortable, I guess. But then at the same time, we saw also in the film that she was really heartened when he got to perform on stage in front of a huge crowd. And they shared so that she sort of like asked in middle school if they offered a theater club, a theater program. So I was just wondering if, you know, if you think that your mom's ideas and perceptions towards you pursuing acting has sort of like shifted or not.
Yeah, it really has shifted from back then. Like in the beginning of theater club, she really did not want me to do any theater whatsoever. She's like, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a tech person, you know. But like now, like I almost pretty much quit acting forever. I almost put it aside for a long time. But then my mom brought up some like theater programs that she made me do, and I'm back into it again.
Wow. What made you almost want to quit?
Well, like I don't like, you know, I don't know. I just didn't. I didn't enjoy it that time. I didn't really enjoy it.
That's fair. That's totally fair. I like that your mom won me over in this film. She really did. She was a kind of the unsung hero in this entire film. I fully enjoyed watching your interaction with her, and Kelly and Hui, you captured it in such an amazing and tender way. You know, even though this is a documentary, this was just so there was a purity about it that was really lovely. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the parents in this and the teachers, and tell us what surprised you the most about working with them.
Yeah, I guess I'll talk about parents a little bit because it's actually like harder than we thought to get them on board in a way. It did take us like several months to get to know them and to kind of win their trust. Because, you know, basically this start out as a kind of children's film. You know, the children are our main focus, and we were just like navigating our way what to do in our production. And maybe 2 or 3 months into the filming, we thought, okay, it's necessary definitely to have the parents and to have their perspectives. But it's not easy to just enter their homes and and to shoot their home scenes, right? So yeah, I mean, we went with the parents to the theater festival in Atlanta, which was shown in our film. And we can stay with them in the same hotel, have dinners with them, talk to them. That's like one important thing for us to get to win trust. But still, like we after that, there were like 2 months when we didn't dare ask them, to get to their homes. And yeah, kind of, actually Jenny kind of rejected us for twice or something. Maybe William didn't even know that. Yeah, but finally we got to enter the homes. Well, it was actually after some crisis, some trust crisis from the children, because I think several months into filming, William and some other kids were kind of thinking like, because we were following them for too long, and they were saying like we're stalkers, we're like, they didn't know what we're actually doing.
Oh, no.
So we actually talked to them. Yeah, it happened. So so we actually talked to the parents, including Jenny, William's mom, and kind of talked them out of this. And William understood what we were doing, and I guess the parents understood more what we were doing as a documentary crew. So only after that, when we were able to kind of enter the homes and talk to them, and I think at that time the parents were naturally kind of very smooth and welcoming with us. I think Jenny were definitely just showing the most loving, the naturally loving part of her interaction with William. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Now, from a production standpoint, I really did want to know, did you immediately get the approvals to film the kids from the parents right away, or did you just kind of wait to see who came up naturally as principal storylines?
I think from the beginning, because theater club has like over 30 children, so the first day of shoot, we definitely had to bring release forms for all the parents to sign, and the parents trust the school, so right, so we kind of like went through the school and have the parents, but who's gonna be in the main storyline would be the thing of casting, right? That's another story. And William was such a special kid. He was Aladdin in the show of Aladdin. So yeah, we immediately catch upon him as our main character. But Charlotte, Alvin, and Jack came on board kind of later. Charlotte, well, I guess Kelly can talk about Charlotte because yeah, later on we had
right. So going back to the releases, so when you decided who was going to be in the documentary, who was naturally coming up as potentially being in it, and you were thinking, we're going to have to talk to the parents, was it easy getting release forms from the parents? I mean, I would be surprised if there weren't a few challenges in that respect.
I guess, well, I think two events sort of like won the buy-in for us from the parents, and Hui mentioned it earlier on. So I think one was when we went with them to Atlanta for the Junior Theatre Festival. I think that I guess speaking from my own perspective, sort of let the parents and teachers know that we are kind of like serious about making a longer film, because the theater club has been filmed before by like previous TV stations, and I think a lot of kids initially thought we were also kind of like a run and gun sort of like team, just going to be there for one session and then like go off. But so then I think that was one, and then I think the crisis with the children that he mentioned, I think sort of gave us an opportunity actually to sort of like, I think, explain a little bit more about what we're trying to do. So for the 4 families that we eventually went into 4 families, their homes, I think they were pretty much quite receptive to the idea of it already. So I guess I'm trying to say that I learned as well that we can't see it as a very like just a very formulaic thing. It's also part of like relationship building added onto it. So by the time we approached this specific parents, we kind of knew that they were quite likely to agree to it. So it went pretty well from there after that.
One quick question before I run over to William, but in filming for 11 months, and Hui, I'd love for you to answer this. In filming for 11 months, the idea of building these relationships with your subjects, how did that help or interfere or challenge you in presenting this documentary in a very journalistic way?
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Right. I think because in a film, you can see kind of like 2 storylines, right? One is the kids doing rehearsals and for the final production. In that part, that part isn't that much journalistic. You just follow the story. The kids, whatever is gonna happen. The teacher's gonna scold the kids for not doing well. The kids were excited and nervous for the final production. That one didn't really need our intervention at all, like as filmmakers, right? You just like shoot whatever. But then I think, okay, well, actually my project now, I don't want to be journalistic at all, but for Curtain Up, I think we do have a lot of journalist ideas of what are the main topics, what are the important things, right? We want to express in our films. So we did have a lot of planning before we enter their homes, what kind of questions we want to ask them, right? About identity, about interactions between generations, about growing up. So yeah, I guess that's about journalism, right? We know we know what kind of topic, like preservations, right? We know what people are talking among Asian communities. and we definitely prepare a list of questions, important questions to ask the kids. The good thing is, well, the best thing actually in making this film is the kids, especially William, understood what we were asking, and they have lights in their eyes when we were asking questions. Sometimes even we didn't finish the question before William spoke out already a great answer to our questions. So that's the exciting part of the making of this film, and I think that's also kind of a very interesting response to us being journalists in a way, that our subjects understand us. So yeah.
Interesting. Now, William, can we go back to the stalking trust issue? What happened during filming that came to be?
It was just they were there for a really long time, and then it just gets awkward all the time because they're just like holding their cameras, not even talking to us while we're doing our thing. And like sometimes we'd just be like sitting there and they'd just be holding their cameras towards us. And it would be, and like we're just trying to have a conversation, but it feels like they're trying to intrude on us and listen to what we're talking about. But then over time, we realized they actually did have good intentions. They weren't trying to like steal information and stuff like that.
Oh, good. Glad. So when you watched this film, and William, I'm assuming you've seen the entire documentary. What was your impression?
I thought some things I maybe shouldn't have said, some things I should have said. Maybe like change up the wording of how I said things, because I didn't think it would be like a documentary thing. I thought it was just like some small little project, but it seemed like much more once I watched it.
Did you learn anything seeing yourself and your family?
I think no, I didn't really learn much just seeing myself. Just saw myself.
No. Kelly, in an ideal situation, what would you hope this documentary achieves? Is it awareness? Is it more reflective for the people that you filmed? Or is it more about a larger audience? And I would ask you the same question, but from the theater standpoint.
I think I would say, yeah, like a little bit of all of it, like awareness, ideally that sort of like translates into action, although it may not be like a very concrete, we're going to set up, every school is going to set up like a theater club and try to include more Asian American children, but like even in families. So I would actually really hope that more educators and parents as well get to see it apart from children. So maybe it will provoke discussions in homes and in school settings, right? Of, what are some sort of like unconscious or conscious biases that we might have, or toward encouraging maybe certain types or certain labels that we might actually have, maybe on even our own children or like kids in schools, and whether parents can sort of, I guess, think about being a little bit more open about encouraging them embarking on different fields. And I hope the kids actually will be inspiring for fellow kids to, like tried but true, to follow their dreams, I guess.
And Hui?
Yeah. Definitely a lot of the audiences of our film are from the, Asian arts community or Asian theater community. So I definitely hope, this was actually how, because we've had, screenings before, and, a lot of responses from audiences, especially doing theater and arts. And they were saying that, this definitely can inspire them to pursue their dreams longer and stronger than they were before. So yeah, we definitely hope this film can reach more people of kind of doing arts and theater, and just it's really for Asian people. If they can show this film to their parents, they might get more support from them. They were seeing how happy those kids were doing what they love to do, right? So I guess also on a larger sense, I hope, because this is a very interesting experiment by this Chinatown school of Asian American kids doing like Disney shows, because, based on my knowledge of New York theater community, Asian community, there are kind of three different things. Like Asian people, like they were doing like either, very like Asian things, like their own like kind of own stories, which is great. And then they were trying very hard to be like a smaller role in a big production, like mainstream theater production, which is also very challenging for them. And this is kind of a third kind of option for Asian, artists, right? Kind of adapting some classic or like the so-called mainstream shows and present the shows by themselves, like in their own ways, right? So and this third option is kind of like a new perspective for theater artists. So I guess, or not only theater artists, but storytellers, right? So I guess, on a larger sense, this can be some inspiration for, even artists who are thinking about what they want to do, what they want to create as Asian or Asian American artists. So yeah.
Wow. Now, William, my final question is, would you ever want to shoot a documentary yourself or be a director? Seeing what Hui and Kelly produced, is that something that interests you?
Maybe, sort of. Maybe, depends. Depends on what happens. Like, I don't know. I really don't know what's gonna happen.
Well, I think all three of you are amazing storytellers in your own right. And I just want to thank you so much for joining us here at DisOrient and taking the time to just answer some of these questions. We're so excited to screen your film, and we just wanted to say a big, big thank you for producing it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.